ThinkTech on a given Monday afternoon, a 4 to 5 block, where we talk about agri-tech. We talk about agri-tech in the islands every Monday, 4 to 5. The Department of Agriculture helps us connect with people who are involved in the industry, and we love to do that because we feel the industry is critically important to the future of the state. Not only because we'll be hungry when the ship doesn't come in, which is true,
Yep.
but because it gives us a self-reliance and independence, a confidence, if you will, that yes, we can take care of ourselves. And one of the people involved in doing that is David Morgan. He's one of the co-owners of Kualoa Ranch, and he's the agricultural manager there, and they have done some extraordinary things. You know, it started out as a ranch with cattle and all that, and horses. I remember you could ride horses.
Yes.
And then the idea was we can take the horses and make this into a bit of a tourism spectacular, and then there was an island out there. You had an island, and you had people come, and they would have parties. It would be a gathering place for people, and that was also very popular. Now you got a robust tourism organization that works, that people know about. They love Kualoa Ranch. It's got all these deep local ties and everything, and it still has the animals, and it still has the tourism.
Yes.
But then you decide, no, that's not enough. We have to be the Renaissance Ranch, and we have to go into food production too. So that's why I'm calling the show Kualoa, the Renaissance Ranch,
All right.
with David Morgan. So, David, what's going on at Kualoa Ranch?
Well, as you mentioned, we're a long-standing cattle ranch. We've been running cattle out there for more than 100 years.
Oh.
And back in the mid-'80s, we got into the tour business, and we've been very successful at that. We've built it up to a fairly high level of participation, and it's fortunate that it's been able to generate an economic engine that now allows us to take a look at the ag side and refocus a little bit more on the ag side and start to build that. And so our first big project, I think, that we went after was to do grass-fed beef. We were operating the beef side of it similar to most of the rest of the industry in the state. We were sending our calves off to the mainland, and then everybody imports the beef back in. So about 3 or 4 years ago, we started taking some steers to full harvest size and marketing grass-fed beef, and that's been a really successful venture so far.
What is grass-fed beef as opposed to other kinds of beef?
Most of the beef in the United States is grain-fed. What you do is you take the animals about 3 or 4 months before you're going to harvest them, and you put them in feedlots in small pens, and they're all bunched in there together, and you feed them grain. And
Fatten them up.
Fatten them up, yes. And it's very easy to control quality that way, and consequently, it does make a good product. But in Hawaii, unfortunately, the cost of importing grain got to the point in the mid-'90s that it was no longer economical to do that. The weight that was gained in the feedlot cost more money than the beef was worth, and so that's when the cattle industry transitioned out of that.
Mm-hmm. So, is there a slaughterhouse in Hawaii?
Yes, there's a few of them. One on each island. There's one on this island, which fortunately we get to use that. Yeah.
Okay, so you don't have to send the cow back to the mainland.
We don't have to. We just need to convince everybody that grass-fed beef is very good.
What is the burden of that? I mean, don't people know? Don't people agree? Don't people feel that grass-fed is more natural, more organic, more, in tune with nature somehow?
Yeah, people are starting to pick up on that, and that's why I think our program is proving to be fairly successful. They are starting to pick up on the fact that grass-fed can be real good. If you go into Whole Foods and look at their prices, quite often the grass-fed beef is actually right now more expensive than the grain-fed beef because there's a niche market in demand there.
Is there a taste difference?
There is a little bit of a taste difference. The chlorophyll that the animals are eating when they're eating the grass, continues on into their body, and there's a little bit of a taste difference. I don't want to say, I guess the best term to use is gamey, but it's not really, really gamey. It's a slight taste.
It's just a little different.
Yeah, and if you get used to it, actually, you might end up thinking that grain-fed beef is a little on the bland side.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting. Well, so who are your markets? I mean, you're going out to the regular supermarkets and chains?
No, actually, we wanted to just find out you know, how much we could move off of our own property. We do have one advantage is that we do have, you know, food service for the tour operation. And as part of that, we do consume a fair amount of hamburger. And it's nice to have the home for that hamburger, you know, in our production. But we just started marketing off of our property, and we've luckily built up a clientele, a loyal clientele that's traveling to us. And so with that in mind, that's kind of the marketing strategy we're taking for all of our product right now. What I wanted to do with the product is to market it in such a way that it has the maximum effect on the ultimate consumer. And if they make the pilgrimage out to the country and go to the source, as it were, and purchase a product from us with our label on it, I felt that that would have the maximum impact.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
And I have a pleasant, you know, trip that day.
Yeah, it's a beautiful side of the
Spend
island.
time with your family, driving out.
Yeah.
Come back with a real gift for dinner.
Yeah. That's great.
So you're selling like a box of really good beef, the kind that you can make a fillet out of and all. And people come and they buy it maybe as a gift.
Yeah, actually, we're not selling box beef per se. It's all individually cut.
Like a butcher.
So you can go buy one ribeye if you want to buy one ribeye. Or you can buy a chuck roast if you want to buy a chuck roast.
So it's a butcher shop.
Yes,
you know?
yes.
So with wax paper and all that.
Yeah, well, it's all the steaks and all that are all vacuum sealed, so they have a pretty decent shelf life.
Now this isn't the only thing, though. You know, the steaks and the beef, it's not the only thing. You have other products that you're selling in the same way. You know, come to me and I'll give you the best of the best kind of thing.
Yes, we've embarked on a couple of other products. The parcel of our land was leased out for a long time to some aquacultural operations, UH being one of them. And a few years ago, we decided to take that back under our own wing and start doing aquaculture again ourselves. And so we're doing saltwater shrimp there and tilapia. And so that's a pretty nifty product, especially the saltwater shrimp. Is what we're trying to get across to our customer base is that if you place an order and say, I want to pick up 2 pounds of shrimp next week, Thursday, if you come in the middle of the day on Thursday, it has been harvested that morning. And if you know how to cook shrimp and do it well,
The best.
Oh, that's an incredible product. It's very different from what you buy in most of the stores around.
Yeah.
And then the other product that we're very, very excited about is earlier this year we got clearance from the Department of Health to start selling oysters. And so we're in oyster production now. And that's a very exciting project as well.
But the oysters, let's talk about, you know, there were oysters and that kind of shellfish out there a long time ago.
Yeah.
And now where are you growing them?
We're growing them in our fish pond. We're fortunate to have an ancient Hawaiian fish pond. It's about 125 acres in size. And you know, the Hawaiians, when they created those things 800 years ago, they were just, you know, incredibly smart when they did that. They made a wall to isolate that body of water from the ocean. And usually there's some sort of a freshwater source that's involved there. And so it creates a estuarine environment. And their objective was to grow herbivore fish in there, and did it very successfully for many, many years. And in fact, our fish pond was one of the last operating fish ponds in the whole state.
Really?
And
That is saying something.
Yeah,
I hope to take a lot of pictures.
yeah. And it was actually actively being farmed the old Hawaiian way up until not too long ago. And then the guy that was running it, George Uemura, who was a real great guy, he finally retired and took it easy. And so we've been looking around at a way to resurrect that. And but today there's challenges with the old way of farming that particular body of water that have made it more difficult. Introduction of new species of fish being one of the primary ones. But in looking around at what else we could do, you know, to do some sort of economic benefit from that pond, we kind of fell into oysters. There's a gentleman, Dr. Bruce Anderson, that we kind of grew up with, and he did
Department of Health.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, my neighbor.
Yeah.
Actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, cool.
Great guy.
Yeah. He did a lot of the groundwork on the Oyster project, and helped us out a great deal, getting us through the laboratory stage and what I call the bench stage.
He ran Oceanic Institute.
Yes,
for
he
a few
did.
years.
Yeah. Very knowledgeable guy, and we really owe a lot of debt of gratitude to him.
So now you have the oysters growing, and you have them in sufficient numbers so you can go commercial.
Yes, yeah.
And where do you get the seed for the oyster? Is that Oceanic Institute or somewhere else?
No. There's in Keahole on the Big Island. There's a couple of operations up there that provide the spat, they call it, the baby oysters for the Pacific Northwest. And so we're just kind of piggybacking on them.
What's the name of the company?
The one we've been dealing with is called Taylor.
Yes.
Yeah, Taylor.
And they're in Nelha, in the Natural Energy Laboratory.
Yes,
yeah?
that's right.
They have a big facility there.
Yeah.
So that's perfect. So you can bring them down there, and now you have a natural environment.
Yes,
which is actually better.
Oh, it's wonderful because in the Pacific Northwest, the environment, of course, it's a lot colder in the water up there, and then the environmental conditions. It takes them, from what I understand, 2 years or maybe more to get to market size, and we're achieving market size in about 7 to 9 months, which is really neat.
That's really fantastic.
Yeah.
Can you reuse them or rebreed them, kind of thing, or do you have to keep fresh seeds all the time?
We have to get fresh seed because there's a distinct advantage to getting our seeds from somebody like Taylor. Is these oysters are something that they call triploids, and triploid means they have 3 sets of chromosomes, and it's the Pacific oyster. In the wild, Pacific oysters normally have 2 sets of chromosomes. Somebody a little while ago figured out how to create oysters with 4 sets of chromosomes. And then after they did that, that's kind of an interesting thing, and then they crossed the 4 sets of chromosomes, the tetraploids, with the diploids, and that produced a real high percentage of triploids, the three chromosomes. The real advantage of that is for the most part, the triploids are sterile. They never spawn, they never reproduce, and consequently, all of the energy that they take in through their food consumption, goes into growth. And so they have a really good meat to shell ratio. The meat quality stays really good, whereas ones that are spawning, once they start to spawn, the meat quality really deteriorates.
Yeah, it takes the energy out of them somehow.
Yeah.
So are they really big? Because, oysters, in my taste now, I like them relatively small.
Yeah, we're harvesting. We could take them out bigger, but we're harvesting them about this big.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so here's my big question for you, David. So is there an oyster bar there? Can I go in and I sit down? I can see a sort of a grass shack, like the way you built out that area on the little island. Right?
Yeah.
And it's out of the South Pacific. There's a little table there, and I can sit and have some oysters with some sauce. I can see it. I can taste it right now.
Oh yeah. So can I. We'd love to do that. Right now, up until this point, there's been 2 things going on. Number one is our primary customer base for our restaurant is people who are not sitting and eating leisurely. They need to eat, in a relatively short period of time, and so it's not, a real good product to fit that particular market. But then the other thing that, up until this point is once again, I'm trying to see how much we can move into the final consumer's hand and that they take home for themselves. And so a little bit earlier this year, we're doing about 1,000 a week and moving them all a dozen at a time off of our property, people buying them and taking them home to consume.
It must be getting popular because, where else can you get natural, fresh, really fresh oysters like that?
And I do have to qualify as, unfortunately, right now, today, we're in a hole in our production. Is the first batch, the commercial batch that we got coming in, we reached the end of that, and we just actually used the very tail end of that production run to demo to the Hawaii Aquaculture and Aquaponics Association meeting was this last weekend, and so they consumed the end of that batch.
They like that, those people.
Oh yeah, they love that. But we had a little bit of a glitch getting the next batch of babies in, and so we're looking at a couple of months of no production until the next one hits. But the next one should hit with pretty big numbers.
I've been checking your website.
Yeah.
That's David Morgan. He's the agriculture manager of Kualoa Ranch. Today's show is Kualoa, the Renaissance Ranch, here on Agritech in the Islands. We'll be right back after the short break. Okay, this is ThinkTech, and one of our favorite shows is Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy. And it goes 4 to 5 every Wednesday right here from ThinkTech in Pioneer Plaza at the core of downtown Honolulu. And my co-host is Ray Starling from Hawaii Energy. Ray, do you like the show?
I love the show. It's great to see all the new people coming in with new ideas about how to save energy, get us off of fossil fuel, and that's what it's all about. So Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy. See us on Wednesday afternoons at 4 o'clock.
I knew he'd say that. Thanks, Ray. Back, we're live. I'm Jay Fidell here on ThinkTech Talks. We're talking about agritech in the islands, as we always do, 4 to 5 p.m. on Monday afternoons, courtesy various guests that are sent to us by the Department of Agriculture, which we greatly appreciated. And today we have David Morgan. He's the agricultural manager of Kualoa Ranch. Hence, we call this show Kualoa, the Renaissance Ranch, because whatever you dream it can do, it can do. And I don't know what you're going to do next. I'm sure it's going to be equally or more exciting than all the things you've done. So, yeah, I mean, I was talking about during the break, I have this vision, and I'd just like to know your reaction to it, of a kind of, I don't want to say food court, but a restaurant, where all your products are like center stage.
Yes.
On the menu, and it's a regular restaurant, but it's out there, and you have beautiful surroundings. It's a piece of Hawaiiana, all of it, and gee whiz! In fact, you already have a kind of you have a gift shop, a fair up there on the hill, on top of the parking lot, as I recall.
Yes.
And a little ball field affair for people to have family games and whatnot. But you could put a restaurant in that general area. I think people would come from miles around, and then. After that, then they would buy 1,000 oysters.
There you go. No, actually, we are definitely, kind of heading in that direction. I mentioned earlier that we started doing grass-fed beef a little while ago, and so we do have a restaurant that services our tour operation. And so when we started the grass-fed beef operation, we started supplying that restaurant with our hamburger. And so if you come out and you order a hamburger from our ranch, it is our hamburger. And it says on the wall, Kualoa grass-fed beef, which is kind of neat. And so, yeah, definitely the next step would be to start incorporating some of the other products that we have.
Yeah, it would be irresistible, honestly.
Yeah, it'd be great.
So, okay, we got the beef. We got the shrimp. We got the oysters. Aquaponics, have you got anything going there?
Not yet. We're still watching aquaponics with a great deal of interest. There's some challenges from my understanding on aquaponics is that, the requirements to maximize yield for the fish that produce the fertilizer for the vegetables or whatever you're going to grow have different requirements to maximize production than the plants do. And so there's a balancing game to play out in there. Yeah. But, we're doing terrestrial agriculture and we're doing aquaculture, and so we're definitely watching with a great deal of interest as things develop there.
Well, this is a good segue to talk about your, I'm going to call it business process, business plan. You guys, as a family, started out in a regular ranch. I don't know if your dad, Franny Morgan, was he ever going to do sugar on that land?
We were actually the first sugar operation on the island of Oahu.
Is that right?
Yeah, that was in the 1860s.
Okay.
And my great-great-grandfather and his brother-in-law started that operation up.
Oh, and that's right. What happened was your dad, Franny Morgan, was working with Theo Davies.
Yes.
And the ranch was just in your family, but it was not part of Theo Davies.
Right.
He left Theo Davies and he went to manage the ranch.
Yeah. Well, he managed the ranch actually my
All
whole
through.
life. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That was kind of his weekend job, as it were.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay, for a long time you were doing sugar.
Well, we only did sugar only for 7 years, because unfortunately for those guys back then, the average rainfall where they tried to grow sugar was only about 45 inches a year, which isn't adequate for sugar. So they struggled for about 7 years and then finally gave up. And you can see the ruins of their factory out there now if you pass by on the highway. But they tried a bunch of different crops back in those days, including pineapple, but finally decided that the land was best suited for cattle, and went into being a cattle ranch. It's been cattle ever since.
What year was that roughly?
I'm not sure. We don't have it documented well, but I would imagine it's in the 1880s or
Oh,
somewhere around
okay, a
there.
long time.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
been an operating,
more than
working
100
ranch.
years. Yeah,
Wow,
Yeah.
that goes back. It goes back to the time of Parker Ranch, actually.
yeah, yeah. Well, not quite that. I mean, Parker's older than we
older,
are, but yeah.
okay.
Yeah. In
Yeah.
fact, my grandmother used to, tell about even when she was a young girl, taking cattle to market, they would, get all the cattle together, select the ones they wanted to get to market. They would drive them just past our boundary into Waikani, and then overnight them in a stone corral there. And then the next morning on horseback, start driving them and drive them all the way into Kaneohe, up and over the Pali, down Nu'uanu Avenue to the Middle Street slaughterhouse, all in one day. That must have been a long day.
Oh, boy. That's got to be, what, 30 miles, something like that?
Probably close to that, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe 25, yeah.
Wow, what a great, rich history.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
book's written about this. Where can I learn about Kualoa Ranch?
I don't know, we got to write a book one day. It's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
been in the family all this time. So, and the family still operates it. And when you were a young lad,
Mm-hmm.
you had thoughts of doing something else, or was this always what you planned to do?
No, I didn't know what I was going to do when I went away to college, and when after, actually I almost stayed on the mainland, and right after I got out of college, I got engaged to be married, and I hadn't been home for a while, and my parents bought me a plane ticket to come home for Christmas, and I was due to be married in February. And so I came home for Christmas, and I looked around, and I went back up to the mainland and went to my soon-to-be wife and said, here we are, we're going to get married at the end of February, and I have to tell you, I think I'm going to move back to Hawaii, and you can come too if you like, but I'm going to move back to Hawaii. And luckily she said, yeah, she
Smart
came
girl.
along, yeah.
That's great. So, what did you study in college? I mean, what qualified you to do this work? Or maybe it's a silly question because you were doing this when you were a kid anyway.
Yeah, I grew up in it, and so actually there's an interesting story. When I went away to college, I at the beginning decided I'm going to be as practical as can, and so I didn't study ag, but I did study business administration, and so started pursuing a degree in business. And my second year, I think I was in college, I had to pick up some electives, and so I took a class in philosophical logic.
Perfect.
And found it very interesting,
Perfect.
fascinating. And so the next semester I picked up another class in that department, and eventually the race was won, and I came out with a degree in philosophy, of all things.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I want to tell you what I tell everybody who studies philosophy. It's the best subject of all.
Oh, it is.
It's a great choice, and
Yeah.
it's a great thing to have in your
Yeah.
life. They say that about law, but I think philosophy is much more important than law.
Well, when you get out of college, a lot of people shortly after that always ask you, what did you study in college? What did you study? And I tell them philosophy, and quite often I get this look like, okay. And my common response to that at that point in time was, if you can put together an argument on such an esoteric subject as what is the nature of reality, you can kind of argue almost anything.
It's true. So there you are, riding around on your horse. I'm sure you do that from time to time.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And looking over the fields and the ocean and the mountain and all. And what sort of philosophical thoughts run through your head when you have that experience?
Well, I've always liked to just try and understand how everything works and how everything is interrelated and everything. It's all just a real big system, and everything's dependent on each other, and at the same time everything is competing with each other. And it's that understanding, I think, that is the foundation for agriculture, really, is to understand how all that interaction works.
Yeah, and to find a place in it
Yes.
so that you can actually make a living at it
Yeah,
and,
so
and,
you
and produce things.
achieve the results you want to achieve.
Yeah. It's a perfect training, no kidding. I don't know if everybody would say that, but I would certainly totally say that, yeah. So I want to pursue that actual thought, though, because there's a lot of people in the state who could be in agriculture, but who aren't in agriculture. And, I don't know, I think in many ways our young people don't see it as an attractive occupation
Yes.
when they should, from a number of points of view. I guess the first point of view is, can agriculture be, satisfying? Can it be a kind of daily experience, that you enjoy, take home and you share with your wife and, otherwise have a good life over? And I wonder what your experience and your thought is, and your advice.
Yeah. Well, to me, agriculture is fascinating. It always has been fascinating. And as I say, it's the understanding of how everything works, how the systems work. And there's a lot of science involved in it. And to understand how all that works is a really neat thing to pursue. I think one of the biggest challenges I see for Hawaii and agriculture for the future is that when the plantations, the sugar and the pineapple plantations went out, is one of the things that did is it eliminated a lot of what I would call middle jobs. You had, like, I worked for a sugar plantation for 9 years, and we had 1,000 employees, and out of that 1,000 employees, only a handful of them did hand labor, and there was more than 100 supervisors involved there. And so one thing those big operations do is they can provide a career path for somebody. And so if somebody comes out of the College of Tropical Ag and wants to pursue a career in agriculture, they can go out there and get a job that isn't just strictly hand labor and gain some experience. And then after a while, if they decide they want to make the leap and do a farm on their own, they've got some bankable experience behind them.
Bankable being the operative word. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And if it's all just real small farms, basically you've got the owner-operator that is figuring everything out, and then you've got the hand labor, and there's not really much opportunity in between there. And so that's what worries me. It's difficult on people who are trying to start a career.
Some thoughts that come out of that. I'm thinking about this, not as much as you do. You're a professional, but it strikes me that, as you say, a small firm, a husband-wife farm, or a husband-wife and best man farm, if you will, it's a 2 or 3 people farm. That's hard work.
It is.
The technology helps.
Yeah.
And a little business experience helps to not get stuck in something. But it's hard because it's small and you don't have economies of scale. A ranch with thousands of head of cattle has advantages, economies of scale from a business point of view. And so ideally, this is like return to the plantations. Ideally, you want to have big capital concentrations that can do big things, command part of the market, and get through the agricultural phases, the sine curve of agricultural success and failure over the seasons, whatever it is. And so the idea then is for this small farm, this 3-person farm, to get bigger. And my question to you now, actually we're going to take a short break, so I'm giving you a minute to think about it.
Okay.
What is your advice to them about how to take that 3-person farm and make it into a significant capital concentration that will have the benefit of economies of scale? Okay, this is ThinkTech Talks. We're talking about agriculture, agri-tech in the islands with David Morgan, agricultural manager of Kualoa Ranch. It's a wonderful story he tells at Kualoa, the Renaissance Ranch. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Donna Blanchard, and I host the show Center Stage on the ThinkTech Hawaii digital series right here every Wednesday from 2 to 3 Hawaii time. I would really love to have you watch the show and see what we do here. I talk with some of the most amazing people, artists, most of them, all of them involved in some sort of artistic process. And our goal here on the show is to dig into that artistic process, and you would not believe what some people say, what some people do, what people go through to express. And these are people who have to express somehow, and I find that infinitely interesting. Not only that they have to express, but how they end up doing it. I really hope that you will watch the show and enjoy talking with some of these people the same way that I do. Thanks, and I hope to see you soon on Center Stage on the ThinkTech Hawaii digital series, Wednesdays from 2 to 3. See you soon.
Hey, we're back. We're live. We're Agritech in the islands here on ThinkTech Talks, talking about Kualoa, the Renaissance Ranch, with David Morgan, agricultural manager of that ranch. An enviable job. I like your job. I want your job. I don't have skill for your job, but you know. So, what do you recommend to them? What do you think about the possibilities of having this three-person small farm? You know, really modest farm, a farm that's I wouldn't say subsistence, but not far from it, grow to a real capital concept. How do I do that? What are the steps I would take?
That is a really good question. There's basically I think you can divide American agriculture up into three sectors. There's the large corporate farms that you talked about that have the economies of scale, and the economies of scale are substantial. They are definitely substantial. At the other end of the spectrum, you have what I call the weekend farmer, is somebody who is making a living doing something else, but enjoys farming and farms kind of as a hobby, and so they don't really they don't have much overhead, they don't have much expenses, and so you can actually be fairly successful being a weekend farmer. In the middle is what you described. I've typically called it the struggling family farm. Yeah. And those guys have a tough road. It's really tough because there's a threshold that's difficult to pass. Your description of three guys get together, or three members of the family that are doing this, to break out of that, you have to start employing people. And once you start employing people, the ball game totally changes, and you cannot compete against the corporate farms. One thing that I would kind of suggest, a big key is to try and figure out a good marketing effort. I went to a luncheon a little while ago that was all focused on farm to table, local production food for, trying to stimulate local agricultural production. And one of the participants in this was Peter Merriman, who's
the restaurant.
Yeah, and
on the Big Island. Yeah.
He's been incredibly supportive over the years in supporting local ag.
Good food too.
And really good food. And during the question answer period, somebody asked him the question: is how do local producers compete against the big corporate farms from the mainland? How do you compete when their costs of production are so low? And he looked out at the crowd and said, "You don't. You can't. What you have to do is differentiate yourself, so that when somebody buys your product, they're not buying just another product off the shelf at Safeway. They're buying something more than that." And I think that's the key, is to try and figure out how to market your product.
The distinction that you're trying to make, that you're trying to sell, or that you want this young group of farmers to try to create, it's local, it's fresh, it's high quality, and although it's a little more expensive, it is adding to the economy, the agricultural economy of the state.
Yeah.
And those are pretty persuasive reasons when you tell people.
Yeah. And what I'd like to see, in the local production is similar to the efforts that we're trying to pursue. Is I think there is a segment of the population out there that places a value on knowing where their food came from. And it's all about perceived value. And going back to what Peter Merriman said, it's all about perceived value. And if they can relate to the farmer who produced it, then that product's going to have more value than something that off the shelf in Safeway, and they have no idea where it came from.
Yeah, and in a world where food is a megacorp experience, it really it makes you a little queasy not knowing where it came from.
Yeah, it can, yeah.
God knows where it came from.
Yeah.
Where is this, crop bin? Where is this this produce bin? Yeah, somebody has got to get out there. I mean, the government maybe. I think the Department of Agriculture is actually doing this, and tell people this really does make a difference. Tell restaurants it makes a difference, and I think some food chains actually make the distinction, so it does make a difference.
Yep.
And the more we make a difference, the more people will say, "Well, I think I'll spend the extra buck on this because I want to vote for Hawaii."
Yes, that's right. Yeah, exactly.
So now, what if these three guys, or whatever partners, were here? What would you tell them to, worry about in trying to build their farm?
Oh, that's a good question too. What do they worry about? That threshold, when you actually cross the threshold and start hiring labor.
When you hire people, then all of a sudden you got a payroll.
You got payroll.
All kinds of issues about that.
Hiring employees, it becomes a totally different ball game. I remember back a long time ago when I was working on the sugar plantation, I worked in the ag department on the science side of it for a while, and then finally I got moved out into the production side of it, into cultivation. And I remember my boss, who was offering me that position, he called me into his office prior to making it formal and said, you're moving now out into the ag side of the production side of the operation, and coming from where you're coming from, you probably think your job is to go out there and grow the best crop of sugarcane you possibly can. And that is what you want to do. But I'm going to tell you that in my experience, 90% of your time is going to be dealing with people, not with the crop. And that's what happens when you start having employees. It's a totally different game.
Well, let's just say real estate isn't about land, it's about relationships. Yeah. And I always kid around with the scientists, and I tell them science is not about science, it's about relationships.
Yeah.
You can apply that philosophically to everything.
Everywhere, yeah.
But I wonder on the question of hiring people and having to deal with those, we call it relationship type of issues all day long. Can't we have maybe, and you can see this from Kualoa Ranch, can't we have an enterprise which is dedicated to technology, which is sort of built on the notion that we can use technology to minimize our need for actual working employees out there, in the land. We'll not only find equipment that's on the market, but we'll find best processes. We'll invent things. We'll do it differently and better than anyone has ever done it before, and therefore we will still be able to operate ourselves if we do. I mean, is this a valid approach?
Oh, most definitely. That's been the history of American agriculture for quite a while now. Is that the technology that's behind it's just incredible, and it's unbelievably fascinating. As an example, in the cattle side, when we buy our bulls, we go to the Big Island and buy our bulls from the big ranches up there. And so when we go up to select them, they give us this piece of paper that has all the bulls that are available and what their various traits are and how well they rank in those traits. And some of these traits may offset each other, and depends on where you are at in your breeding program, what you want to look for may be different. And as an example is somebody may be looking for calving knees. I don't want to have my cows having problems giving birth, so I want calving knees. And so this bull here, its offspring will perform really well in calving knees. And somebody else may be looking for size, which might be offsetting of calving ease. And so this one,
What's calving ease?
how easy the cow has giving birth.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, so that there's no difficulty there. And offsetting that may be size of calf. I want a bigger calf because my calves are getting kind of small. And there's this whole range of different traits that you could be looking for in your breeding program. And here's all these bulls, and they're all ranked in the various traits. And these bulls are young and have never bred yet, but they already know how they're going to perform. And they know how they're going to perform because they've extracted blood samples from them and gotten some hair follicles and sent them to the mainland and had them analyzed. And they've identified all the DNA markers for all of those traits and have gained enough experience that they can rank them as to how well that bull is likely to perform. And so that's just an example of, you know, some of the technology it can make a huge difference. And so, you know, technology is definitely the key. That's what's gotten American agriculture to where it is now. And
how about diversification? It's clear that Kualoa has, you know, diversified. I mean, you have ranching plus retail, this, that, and the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's like you're very courageous. You decide you want to do something and you do it.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you how that's going to work in the future. But it just seems to me that these three young people,
Mm-hmm.
If they stick on one crop and just be very efficient, that may not be as good as if they kind of branch out and take a poke at this and take a poke at that. What do you think?
I would agree with that. And going back to the, you know, my marketing model that I described earlier, where we're doing grass-fed beef and oysters and shrimp and tilapia, and we're starting to get into fruit and veg crops now as well. One of the things that I wanted to do on that is we're trying to, in essence, build a country store. You come to the source and buy your food from the source.
It's a great idea, really.
And the main reason I wanted to, you know, pursue that model and see how far we can take it is that almost everything on the agricultural side that we're doing is we are like your three-man operation. Is we have the livestock operation, we have 4 employees. The shrimp and tilapia, we have 3 employees. The oysters, we have 2. So each one of them is that mom and pop operation, as it were. And if you only do one crop, you're going to be marketing fairly close to selling a commodity. And you're going to have it's going to be tricky. And so,
commodities are always hard.
Commodities are going to be hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God, you know, it just a thought popped in my head about you know, the country store idea.
Mm-hmm.
So you're a bit of a drive. It's a pleasant drive. I wouldn't mind. I will take the drive. I'll look you up. Okay. You know, and that's an experience everybody should have, and on a repeated basis. But suppose I said, David, I'm going to give you 200 feet in Whole Foods, Kailua, okay? And you can put a sign that says Kualoa Country Store.
Mm-hmm.
Kualoa Country Store. Then you can come and sell your stuff, just as if you were in your own country store on the ranch itself. You think that would work?
It might. I'm hoping the added draw of, you know, coming to our location is going to be, you know, an additional perceived value, a little bit closer to the source. But, you know, for somebody that may not have that opportunity or may not have the public exposure that we have, that's one thing that we have definitely going to our benefit. That avenue may very well work for them, and they are trying to do things like that, and I give them credit for that.
So now looking at it from the point of the last minute or two of our discussion, looking at it from the point of view of, you know, the state in general, it seems to me that what you're doing is very nutritious, and I mean that in multiple ways. You know, for the state, for the agricultural economy of the state, which to me is more and more important all the time, and lest we forget for one moment. But where is it all going? Where is it going with guidance, and where is it going without guidance? I mean, if the government does something to incentivize it, to, you know, shepherd it one way or the other, how will it work? And if we just let it go, you know, on a free market, sort of fragmented basis, where will it go? Any thoughts?
You know, going back to your 3-person farm there, one of the things that I think is makes it difficult for the 3-person farm is the lack of volume makes it hard to, you know, accomplish things. You're out there all by yourself and trying to find a little niche and all that, and really what I think ag needs more than anything is to try and draw everybody together, all the participants together, no matter what their point of view, and realize that, you know, Hawaii ag should all be in the same boat. We should all talk with the same voice, and go at it, you know, from trying to achieve the same thing, because our competition is not here, it's out there, and we're importing, you know, way too large of a percentage of our food at this point.
David, you know, it's really, it lends to the thought that since the days of the plantations, we've lost capital concentrations of local capital concentrations of magnitude, you know, and people, investors from outside, companies from outside come in and eaten our lunch, so to speak, in that department.
Yeah.
You're one of the great exceptions, which I admire you for. But that's what we have to do. We have to create greater capital concentrations in agriculture.
Definitely. The infrastructure is lacking. We need to build the infrastructure back.
You'll have to come back to our show and talk more about this as it goes forward.
Yeah.
David Morgan, agricultural manager of Kualoa Ranch. Kualoa Ranch, the Renaissance Ranch here on Agritech in the Islands. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you.
Aloha.
Okay.